Hi, I'm Gerard Virga, and welcome to the Florida Family Law Attorney Podcast. I'm so excited about today's guest, somebody who's frequent in our office and who's been in our area and has been really changing the way that paralegals are associating and the way that they're getting information, and has been hosting lunch and learns in our area and offering all kinds of support to paralegals in our legal community. I'd like to introduce Asha Maharaj-Lucas. Asha, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Gerard. Thank you so much for having me on today. Well, like you said, I'm a paralegal. I've been a paralegal for 30 years now, and I love the profession. I worked in several different fields, and it just, it kind of grows because you want to learn more, you want to learn different areas. So unlike other paralegals who've stayed in one field their entire career, I've jumped around a little bit, learned a lot about it. I love what I do. I enjoy working with attorneys, going to court. Trial was always great. But recently, I haven't done trials, I would say, in about 7 years, but it's still fun, staying behind the scenes and doing the work. The research part of it, I think, was something that really attracted me to staying in the field after graduating college. I did, get my paralegal certificate, but I thought maybe I'll do something else, because I got my degree in political science. So,
Right.
go on to law school or become a politician of some sort. But the work is very satisfying. I think that's why I stay in the field and I still do it today after 30 years.
One of the things I really like about the law is today a colleague of mine was over here and we were working on some settlement agreements and motions and different things. And she's co-counsel on a few cases. And she and I were arguing with each other about what would happen if somebody paid down a marital debt with non-marital money. And, before you know it, we're down the rabbit hole 30 minutes and learning something new. And hey, even though I didn't find the answer I was looking for, I found this case and I learned something. It's a never ending journey of learning. And I think that's what's really so cool about you is that you do the Paralegal Association and you're helping paralegals stay current and learn and continue to grow professionally and on so many levels. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey there in the Paralegal Association and the roles you played in it?
Yeah, so the Paralegal Association of Florida, I didn't know about it. Like a lot of paralegals would say that you meet today, right? And they're like, oh my gosh, we didn't know that this existed. So I think I was working in the field for almost 15 years before I realized there was a Paralegal Association. And I joined here in Tallahassee, which is the Big Bend chapter. And soon after that, I ran for a board position. So when you get on the board, you kind of, meet people, you kind of start planning the different events that happens within the chapter. And it just took off from there, meeting the people that were the women and men that were already sitting on the board was a big boost for my energy within the field. I saw what they were doing for paralegals. I saw how they were helping in the community in different areas that needed help. And I thought this would be great, just get involved and do whatever I could to help out. So I slowly moved up on the board for the Big Bend chapter. And then I joined the state board and eventually I became the state president. And my goal in that was to become a leader that mimicked the leaders that inspired me. I wanted to be just as good as them or keep the paralegals involved the way they kept the paralegals involved. And we had about 13 chapters, but due to COVID, a few of them have closed, just lack of involvement, people being afraid to come out and meet in person and stuff like that. But the association itself is still thriving. Whose members per se, like the paralegals didn't, drop off. They just stopped going to meetings. So it was difficult to have that location running without people there. And the people who moved around or the chapters that closed, those members are still a part of the association and they're still very active. They help out as much as they can. And they also try to keep involved in their community. I think a big part of what the Paralegal Association does is keeping the paralegals involved not only in the legal profession and providing CLEs of everything that's current, so you know that whatever you're doing at your job is correct. We try to stay involved with the community and other legal organizations within the community. So we do get involved with a lot of the bar association, like the young lawyer section or the Tallahassee women section, and the local bars, right? So we have the Tallahassee Bar Association here, we have the Broward Bar Association. So we try to stay involved with them as well and do joint CLEs. And this is where we connect with a lot of the attorneys that, each other that we work with. So we can put a face to the name when we're talking about our attorneys, and also the judges. This is how we meet the judges and their JAs, which makes our jobs a lot easier when we have to schedule a hearing or we have to ask for a continuance, or we just need to reach out and say, this is supposed to be moving along and it's not. What's happening? Is the judge on vacation? What's going on? So when there's that type of connection, they feel more comfortable talking to you and sharing information. And
Right.
the Paralegal Association has been a big part of that for me.
I think, yeah, that's a big thing that's happened in our society in general since COVID with Zoom hearings, before that, email. I remember when I first started my practice, I was always dropping off motions and orders to the JA when I was going to court. Here are the proposed orders. Then it got into email, and then we had Zoom. And I know some of these JAs because I had practiced years and years with them, with their judges. And I can't tell you sometimes the last time I've seen them or had that contact with them. And I do think that's, it's critical because you feel just a little bit more comfortable when you know who's on the other side and something about them, and a little more makes them a little more approachable about the issues. Well, running for president of the Paralegal Association of Florida, that's a pretty big decision. Can you tell us a little bit about what made you decide to take those first steps into that journey?
Yeah. So how should I say it? Everybody has an idea of what they want to promote in life. And for me, the progression of the Paralegal Association, I had an idea of what it should be, like staying completely connected in not just with paralegals, but with other legal associations, right? And all of the professions involved with paralegals. And I thought that our past leaders were doing a great job keeping the paralegals involved and keeping them educated, but I didn't see a great connection with other legal associations or just other associations within the community that may need help from paralegals. And so I thought that is something that we should try and focus on, not just for community service opportunities, but for real connection, so that they know that they can reach out to us if they need help with anything or if they're looking for suggestions on how to do something. So that's what I thought the Paralegal Association should kind of focus on. And that's what I started researching, how connected we were over the past years that we've been established, since we were established. And I saw that we were lacking. So I took that platform and I ran with it.
That's a big achievement. I know, I've been lucky enough to see you mentor firsthand, as you have mentored us, because we've just, been working on getting our chapter recognized. I think it's maybe official now that it's recognized. We're getting close, if not, and adding that to our community, because that's something that we didn't have. And the paralegals didn't really have the opportunities that the association really brings, and the mentorship someone like you brings. And I've seen you already do a lunch and learn, and I think there's more activities underway, and that Connie was telling me about that y'all are working on scheduling. Tell me why you want to be a mentor. What drives you to be that mentor? Because that is something I can tell you really have an innate passion for.
So I think it's a really rewarding part of life, to give advice to someone and watch them grow from using that advice or benefiting from that advice. And it's the generation that we have now coming behind us are more into computers and AI and all of the just sitting in front of the screen. And it's really important to do in person networking. So for me, the connection is showing them how important it is to reach out and actually meet someone and have a face to face conversation with them, because I think we're losing that skill, which is really sad.
Oh yeah, I would have to say that we were at my son's graduation today, and I was talking to another parent, and we were talking about, our kids are getting to the age where they're starting to drive and interact a lot more with the world, and you have a generation of young people who've honestly spent more time in front of a screen than interacting with people or in the real world and observing and interacting and reading people and being aware of your circumstances. And I know it's something here at the law firm I sometimes struggle with because sometimes issues come up and I said, hey, did anybody inform the client of such and such? And I emailed them and I'm like, did you call them? Did you talk
Right.
to them? Did you relay it to them on a personal level? Or, I've seen the in practice, attorneys, we sometimes get into these email wars, and it's amazing what can be accomplished if somebody just picks up the phone and you have a conversation, or hey, can I meet you for lunch or coffee, and let's try to work this out. Sometimes goes a lot further than emails because so much of the human touch and the context behind what you're saying and the tone is just lost in the electronic format. It's just you can't tell that you're not meaning to be like a jerk when it reads that way, but that's not what
Right.
you were intending. You were, just trying to be to the point. But I think that's something that's, in our profession as a whole, there could be a whole lot more of. And I think it would really benefit the legal system if there was a little more personal touch and some mentoring in that regard. That while an email is good, it covers your butt, there's documentation. A phone call sometimes is needed, especially if you have to deliver some unpleasant news about a case, or something's going to hurt somebody emotionally. Nothing
Right.
like a phone call or a face to face even.
Yeah, I
Well,
definitely agree.
yeah. Well, let me ask this. Connie, like I said, has been working on establishing the chapter here in the Panhandle, and I think she's been really enjoying that, and to the degree that's allowed her to mentor at that level. And what do you think the most rewarding part of mentoring paralegals is for you?
For me, it actually is the relationship that it generates.
Mhm.
The one-on-one communication, the outreach, just talking to someone and making them feel better. You're an attorney, you understand how stressful this job is. And
Yes.
yeah, and every day there's a different challenge. And so some days are not great, and it's nice to know that there's somebody you can call and talk to who understands what you're going through, but also who's willing to talk to you. Just take that, 10 minutes, not even, just to make you feel better about your day. And when they listen to you or you listen to them, and then you share, like, I understand what you're going through because of XYZ, because I've done the same thing, or whatever the response is, they actually feel better and they know that you care. I think a part of the human connection that we're missing from being constantly in front of the computer or on our phone is that human connection. And even, the gentleness in your tone when you talk to someone, they reach out and they're so frustrated or they're angry or whatever, just the tone puts them in a different mindset. I know the profession is very difficult. I know we have a lot of mental health and wellness issues with our profession and in the legal profession in general. So it's important to keep everything in perspective.
One of the things I think, about our profession in the legal field is over the 20 years I've been doing it, the speed at which we're expected to move has so exponentially increased,
Yes.
and the expectations of from clients of instant gratification, of how fast the information can be generated on the computer, how fast we can have a hearing, how fast we can do these things. Everything is now in our society such an impetus for speed that, people sometimes forget that the lawyer, the paralegal, the judge, everybody who's in this field, we're just humans.
Right.
And the data now can move at a faster rate than you can respond to it. And we were joking the other day, and I have a younger attorney who works for me who I try to mentor, and she actually mentors me a lot with, computer things and new things. And I told her that I severely missed receiving letters in the mail. I said I preferred it when you had to write a letter to the other side. I preferred it when we dropped off the pleadings at the courthouse and you got your stamped copy and you bought your stamped copy back and you mailed opposing counsel their courtesy copy. And she looked at me like, why would you miss that? And I said, if it was really that important that you were willing to take the time to write it out, fold it up, envelope it, stamp it, take your postage, go to the post office. It had real meaning.
Yes.
I said, I get a one-line email now and I need to, and people expect an instant response. And you could really, spend the entire day, in my opinion, just responding to correspondence, electronic correspondence, whether it's through the client software portal, through email, through text messaging. And the rate of speed by which all this occurs, it puts a strain on all of us, I think. And it puts a strain, like you said, on the personal relationships and the mental health and the things that all people need, and no matter what the profession is. But I do think the law, really, needs those things because I know that when I talk to another lawyer and I'm running an idea past them I have, or I think something's maybe gone south in the case, it's not what I expected it to go, and I didn't get the ruling I wanted, or maybe the evidence has not turned out the way I anticipated. And I just talk with the other attorney and they share their war stories and we put our heads together and, it makes you feel better, but so much of the law, I think, is taught and molded in a manner that they make us out to be an island. This island that never makes a mistake, that answers every email in 24 hours, that is worried about every bar rule and every pressure put on us, which we're all trying to do our best on all aspects. But sometimes you need to hear other people say, I've had that happen to me too, and it went this way, and you're not the only one, and hey, this is what I did. And you know, accepting our own fallibility to a degree on all fronts. And none of us are infallible, none of us are an island, and none of us are perfect. And building that community, whether it be lawyer to paralegal or paralegal to paralegal or lawyer to lawyer, is critical. And showing a little grace and just trying to work together, because at the end of the day, even though we may be on opposite sides of a case, does not mean that we're at war with one another on a personal level. I think that goes a long way. So let me ask you this, because, I run a law firm and, I probably not quite as many people as the state of Florida Paralegal Association. I'm sure that's got a lot of members. As a leader, I hit problems every day, things I think are going to work. I think I've made my vision clear. I think I've, and then obviously maybe I haven't, or, maybe the people aren't aligned with what I want to do just quite yet. What are the biggest challenges you faced being the president, like, on your achieving your goals or communicating your vision, because that's a heck of a group to lead. And I know paralegals. I love paralegals. I've been working with them 20 years, and a paralegal actually taught me more about how to practice law than law school or the first attorney I worked for. Paralegals are strong people and opinionated at times, and they're go-getters and they're tough. So how did you lead them? What challenges did that face?
So I made a lot of changes when I took over as president. And when I took over, it was January of 2020. So it was right at I just had 3 months before COVID started. And so I had to figure out how to do Zoom CLEs, and nobody knew what that was at the time, and just keep the association afloat, improving on what we do, but changing it altogether. So the challengers were trying to convince the other chapter leaders that it's going to work. Just give it time. It's going to work. It didn't work this month, but next month, everybody will understand that this is what needs to happen and it's going to work. And so it was just the motivation to keep calling and, holding them up and talking to them and assuring them that, the changes that I'm making or that we're making will work eventually and things will get better. A lot of them got discouraged, but I think like you said, we're so strong and we are so opinionated that nobody left, right? Nobody packed up and ran away because they were not willing to change, because what we do every day is changing. We have to pivot every day, like, okay, so this case is settled. So what, have 1,500 exhibits ready to go,
Yeah.
new on to the new case.
That's how
So
you settle a case. You know that, right?
yeah,
You get everything prepared. You stay late. You build the binder all night. A joker is going to settle. The case
yes.
where you're running behind or that's the one that's definitely going to go to trial.
Yes, always, always. I remember one of my attorneys walked out of court like, 20 minutes after trial started, and he's like, "Yay, we settled." I'm like, "Not yay. Look at all my work. Nobody
We
gets
had
to
a we
see
had
it."
a we had a trial about 2 months ago. It was set to be for I think 3 days. When I say wagons, we actually went and bought those wagons that you see, like, for Little League or, to the
Yeah.
beach, the collapsible wagons, and had 3 wagons to house the exhibit notebooks. Because it was going to be in person. We bought the wagons. We stayed here, the paralegal had toothpicks under her eyes making the notebooks. I felt so bad for her. She was great. And, it wasn't probably an hour after the last Xerox and hole punch was done and bam, settled. That's the universe has a sense of humor.
Yes.
It really does, especially the legal universe.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. That sense of humor. We don't always get it, but, eventually it comes.
Yeah. Now it's funny. It's funny 2 months later, but I like I was saying, I was really mentored as an attorney by a paralegal named Sharon Hagens, and Sharon and I hit it off because Sharon had been doing it for years, and I was a law clerk, baby lawyer, and she was struggling with some issues with Word Perfect. I knew I watched this, it can, was helping her, and in return, I helped her with Word Perfect, and she helped me with everything else. And she worked with me, through my clerkship, and then when I finally opened my own practice, she worked here until she passed. I still think about her daily and some of the little tidbits of advice she gave me along the way. And really, what do I do next, Miss Sharon? What do I do next? When I first started out, well, what is this? And I would think it was the end of the world and the sky was falling. And she'd be like, "You got 30 days to respond. It's okay. This is standard. This is
Yeah.
this is what we do next." And and some of like the humor she had was funny. I don't know why. She told me at one point, never trust a lawyer with a shirt pocket. And I think at that time, designer shirts had the shirt pockets, and she's like, "Don't ever trust a lawyer with a shirt pocket when you're doing depositions or anything. Don't trust them." And I still remember that and her jokes. But you know, a lot of people I don't think realize that we go to law school and we get this great academic education on practicing law. There is very little rubber meet road, practical. How do I file this? Where is the courthouse at? What do you mean I have to drop it off with the clerk? Or, paralegals, in my opinion, in most cases, are the real first teachers of lawyers. And, that what you teach us and the practical aspects of it and supporting us in those very first years where we don't really know a whole lot and we're just putting our feet into a sea of, law, and it's the paralegal that really is the life raft and the mentor to the attorney. Every young attorney I interviewed or talked to about, this profession, I always tell them, like, you need to realize where you stand in the beginning. You are just learning. The paralegal, hopefully, they've assigned you with has got, years and years of experience to make a good team because to make up for your lack of experience, perhaps. And to always treat the paralegal with the utmost respect because I can't tell you the number of times the paralegal has saved me with, "Don't you have court in 30 minutes?" Or, "Hey, I know you lost track of time," or, "Hey, did you see this email?" It's the paralegal who's really there. And a lot of times, I think a lot of lawyers want to internalize all the glory it's my case. And, I think that, for every case, that if you're lucky enough to have a paralegal, it's a team effort. And the paralegal is very critical to your personal development and then maintaining your professional development, because oftentimes it's the paralegal who's talking with the clients and smoothing things over and explaining the process and gathering the information for you. And it's really, a team effort. And lawyers, probably need to really reflect on. I think if everybody reflected, there was probably a paralegal in the beginning who was your Miss Sharon,
Right.
who kind of showed you the ropes and helped you out and, told you kind of what was going on and what was expected and, looking after you in the beginning. So, one of the things, I wanted to ask you, from somebody who's been doing this so long and all your different positions you've held and experiences, what do you think, um, in today's world, like if you're a new paralegal, what do you think is critical for the new paralegals coming into the profession?
It's really so just like attorneys coming out of law school, excuse me, getting the knowledge of what we're supposed to do from school and not having hands-on of what a paralegal is actually, what they actually do in the office, right? It's the same for paralegals, but what they should really understand is basically exactly what you said. We're the support, but we're also the backbone. We're supposed to know everything, the court dates, the deadlines, where to look for certain information, how to get things done as quickly as possible. And a lot of that comes from talking to other paralegals, talking to others who have been in this profession longer than you have, and really absorbing all the information and training. I think someone said active listening, right? So active listening doesn't mean doing something constantly while you're listening, but really listening to what that person is saying and imagining the things that they're saying. So you have an image in your head of what they're talking about. And so you get a better understanding of it. And I think a lot of new paralegals need to do that. Sit with the older paralegals or the more seasoned paralegals. Forgive me, older paralegals listening to this. I mean, seasoned paralegals, and really learn, really listen to what they're saying, because it's difficult when you have, I call them baby lawyers, the ones just graduating law school coming out. I think they look at paralegals as we're taking away that degree from them, but it's not, right? We're there to support them, make them look better, make them do better, So if they would just understand that, then it would help us do our jobs better. So we don't feel like we're fighting with them constantly, right? We're supposed to work together as a team. And it's the same for new paralegals. You're going to work together with a seasoned paralegal as a team and learn all you can from them. And it takes me back to mentoring, because a big part of that is mentoring the new paralegals, reaching out to them, if they are new in your office, or if they're just coming out of school and you're pulling them in and you're trying to get them to understand a process. We do work really fast and we have to get a lot of work done in a small amount of time, but you could be pleasant about it. You could, do it in a way that's inviting and you keep the interest going.
I think of paralegals sometimes here in my own personal life. I think of like an air traffic controller who's trying to keep everything going, all the balls, in the air at once. And we got this date here and we got this much to, how a paralegal keeps up with that and how they do it with grace and keep the balls all in the air and nothing hitting the ground and keeping up the deadlines and the tasking. And sometimes I've known in my career, I'm like, oh my God, we got to do this tomorrow. And the paralegal's like, I already got it. I already started the draft, I'm already on it. That's, to me, an amazing skill. One thing I've kind of noticed in the last few years, it seems like, and maybe it's just my own personal bias, but it doesn't seem like there's as many people entering the paralegal field or as many applicants or young paralegals that are applying, or asking us if there's openings. It seems like, it's maybe a field that's not, growing with the pace of the demand that the legal industry really needs. Do you have any insights on that? Or
I think we have at the Paralegal Association have seen the same thing. And my belief is because a lot of the programs for paralegal, well, a lot of the courses for paralegal programs have gone completely online. So there's no classroom learning anymore. And it's difficult to, I don't know, it's difficult to learn this stuff just by reading. You have to have that conversation. You have to have the disagreement. Somebody says, what do you put in the first paragraph of a brief? And oh, just cut and paste from the motion, and put it in there, or, from the answer, the response, whatever. And, somebody who is more experienced or somebody who is already working in a law firm would say, no, no, you have to do it this way and you have to find information here. So I think it comes from the very bottom of where they're getting their paralegal certificates from or their paralegal education, and the fact that a lot of that has gone to online classes completely. So I think we're losing interest in the field. What we have seen is a lot of legal assistants have started the process of becoming paralegals and trying to learn and get their certificate from their experience instead of from going to classroom learning.
I know that, in our personal experience at my law firm, at first we would just run ads for paralegal, registered paralegal. And what we've kind of, shifted to in today's climate is if someone has some, office experience or legal experience and has aptitude, and it may be a 2 or 3 year investment process on our end to help them and have them paired up with a seasoned or senior paralegal and try to develop them into the paralegal. Because I do think that we had a course here in Panama City, where I live, at the state college for paralegals, and for some reason that just went away.
Yeah.
And I don't think in the community there's a lot of discussion about, hey, have you ever considered being a paralegal? But I think, I think that's something that our profession has to really kind of look at, because you can't have a great lawyer if you don't have a great paralegal, right? Like,
Right.
it's a team, like I said before, and you need your wingman. And if you don't have your wingman, you're just flying solo, and that's more pressure for everybody, and it really increases the chance of mistakes and stress and pressure getting the better of you. So I've been doing this for a little over 20 years now, and I was joking with a young attorney I work with about she was asking something about Microsoft Word, and I told her, I said, I started out, we had Word Perfect. I was like, I had to learn. I was like, I didn't have Word till I had my first kid. Like, I don't even, I don't know what you're talking about. I know enough about it now, but not at that level. And joking, but technology has just taken off. I remember, like, some of our software was one notch up from DOS. We had, I guess for any younger listeners out there, DOS was before Windows, when you actually had to type in your commands. But we we've seen such a great change from case management software to AI now. And it just seems that it moves at such a rapid pace of development. And we were just sitting around one day and talking about the future of paralegals and where do they stand with AI. And one of the paralegals said, we're just gonna get replaced. I said, I don't think you're going to get replaced, but I said, I think the paralegal of the future may be one of the best AI prompters in the field.
Yeah.
How am I prompting this thing to generate these discovery requests? Or how do I prompt this to give me some idea of maybe what's missing in the discovery, or what, help me, assist me with summarizing this for critical facts. I said, I do think, it could yield for lawyers and paralegals a whole nother avenue of skill sets that we're going to have to stay up with the times and to offer the best service to our clients and stay competitive. So I guess my question to you, with knowing that how this technology has dramatically changed over your years of being a paralegal, how have you adapted to technology changes, and how do you think paralegals of the future are going to have to adapt to all this new software and AI and all this, all these drastic changes to just our day to day life?
I think some of the things will stay the same. Excuse me. AI is definitely going to turn us into the best prompters possible in the world, I think. So, I'm trying not to age myself, but I worked for the federal court system before Pacer ever existed. And when Pacer came around, we were like terrified that we were all going to lose our jobs because now
Right.
there's Pacer. Like, what's going to happen? The attorneys don't need us anymore. Creditors don't need us anymore. What are we going to do? And our jobs changed into proofing everything that was submitted to the court via Pacer, right? And it got more in depth because instead of just, looking at the first page of what we were receiving to make sure that it was in the right format or something, we had the time to read through the document to make sure that they submitted everything that they needed to submit and all of the exhibits or attachments were there. So the job just changed, right? It never went away. And I think it's the same thing through time. So, like you're saying, you use WordPerfect. So did I. I know DOS, I know Lotus. Does anybody know Lotus out there?
I know Lotus. I mentioned Lotus the other day, and I was like, there was no Excel, it was Lotus. And like, she was looking at me like, you mean the flower, or what are you talking about? Shut up, old man. Go back to your conference room.
Right. We'll bring you information in there and modern technology. I know. So these things, like, although all of those technology or programs changed and advanced, right? We still use it's not like we went away. We're still using them. Like, we still have to write code for them. Now we figured out how to manipulate each cells in Excel where we couldn't do that before. And we can gather more information. So we have a lot more information to use that would benefit our cases, and I think that's what's going to happen with AI in the paralegal world. I don't think we're going to go away. I think just like it takes the new attorneys or the baby attorneys time to understand that we're going to be a part of the team and we shouldn't be adversaries when we're working on a case, I think it's the same thing's going to happen with AI. Like, we're going to make that a part of our team and the paralegals will remain. I don't think they're going to go anywhere.
I don't think so either. Like I said, we were debating it and talking about it one day here at work, which is rare that we have the time to do that. But we were having a conversation about it because everybody was kind of amazed about what we've seen different vendors show us it'll do and what we figured out it can do. And I said, you know what, guys, what we might see happen here is we might come full circle. I said, where, we used to talk on the phone with the client a lot more. There wasn't maybe the constant email thread of one line responses going back and forth all day or text messages. I said, but if I can have the AI analyze this stuff at a much faster rate, summarize things for me, or, give me ideas that, launch my creativity on maybe discovery questions or things I want, and it frees up time, we might find that technology comes full circle and we're able to get back to the human interaction. If I have the AI that will help cut discovery time down by 50%, then maybe that means Asha, has more time to talk to the client and me and the other paralegal, and maybe have a little more time to talk to the attorney, and we get something resolved, or move this thing along. And honestly, a lot of people, and family law especially, people want compassion, people want empathy, people want a lot of the lawyer's time. Sometimes, unfortunately, that time doesn't feel productive to the attorney because we know that evidence is probably not going to be relevant or admissible. But if we had the time to listen and connect, on all these different levels, because the computer was able to help us with the pace, because it can go that fast and free us back up to be human, that would be pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how we could, maybe use AI to achieve that at the firm, where there is much more time and communication and, to achieve those goals, not just, hey, because we have it, we can have more cases or we can do more work, but we can go back to, I want to talk to the client for an hour and, get to know them better before we have this hearing or, this trial. So I tell you what, technology is kind of my thing. I'm very interested in it, and I'm interested to see where it takes the legal field. So it's always interesting to hear it from different perspectives. But I would definitely have to agree with you. ChatGPT is not going to replace your paralegal.
No.
It might replace your therapist. It might help you write a schedule out for your kids' chore chart. My wife was using that the other day, but it's not going to be able to replace the paralegal. And then the paralegal brings something to the table. I think a lot of times is the personal chemistry and the dynamic. And the computer cannot bring personality and dynamic yet. I don't, who knows where we might be in before I retire. But right now, you need that, and people need that. People crave people. I want to talk to the paralegal and say, "What do you think about this? Like, do you think this is good evidence? How does it strike you? I want your feedback." I find sometimes that paralegals offer really genuine feedback because while they know a lot about the law, they may not have spent a lot of time in the courtroom yet, and you get a little bit of a hybrid of legal knowledge with
Yeah.
common sense, and to me that's invaluable. So, we're going to take it personal now. So, beyond all your professional achievements, what's your personal accomplishment that you're most proud of?
My son. And I think just doing all the things that I do and staying involved in his life.
Yes.
He is now 16, but when he was younger, I think we had an activity every night except for Sunday night.
You must know my wife. Y'all must calendar together.
Yeah. So, working on cases and going to trial, like you said, we're at the office until 2, 3 in the morning, prepping and getting ready. But I was fortunate enough that my family life was also a priority. So I would leave for an hour and a half to go to a game or to grab dinner or something with him.
You're like me. You had the first, second, and third job, or
Right.
first,
Right.
second, first, second, and third shift. First shift's work. Second shift is being mom or dad. Then when everybody goes to sleep, you go back and you hit the third shift to finish up everything that you didn't get finished in the
Oh
first shift.
gosh, yes. Yes. So yes, and today I can say that he's, very happy that I came to his games. I don't hear, "Oh, well, you weren't there. You don't know." Yeah. So that was a really big thing. You know, Going back to the technology, what we were just talking about, I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, but the Big Bend chapter, I'm organizing a seminar for the paralegals in August, and that is the focus of the seminar. So we're trying to do things to all of our CLEs are related to the basics, the fundamental of being a paralegal, not necessarily what AI can help you do. And a big part of that is networking, talking, and
Yeah.
being face to face with people. And, I reached out to a woman today to be a speaker, and she and I worked together back in 2016, 2017. And I haven't spoken to her since, because of COVID and all of that. And we ended up on the phone forever. But, once we started the conversation, it was almost like we had not we didn't have a break in our conversations for so many years,
Right.
but it's because of that base connection and, relationship that you have because you talk to people, because you reach out, you pick up the phone, you don't just send an email. And that also goes back to my biggest accomplishment, my kid. I wanted to make sure that I was there, that he saw me, that he knew that although I was on the phone or I was on a Zoom call, I was sitting at the ball field watching him.
Oh, yeah. I carry a Verizon wireless router and a laptop, and that accompanies me to the baseball park. I try to, not pull it out, but on occasion I have to pull it out. And, my kids have kind of grown accustomed to that. But I try not to miss anything either. In fact, one thing that's kind of funny, we had a new person working in the office and they asked me, "Can I calendar da 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 da?" And I was like, "I don't know." "What do you mean you don't have anything on your calendar?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "Ask Mary." And they're like, "Well, who's Mary?" I was like, "My wife." Ask my wife. He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You need to ask her." "Well, why do I need to ask her? Something on the calendar." I said, "I don't know what kid activity you may have gotten scheduled since last night and if she's put it on Clio or not yet at this point." I said, "But, I don't want to miss any of that stuff." Um, you know, and that's one of the things we try to do at our firm is we know that people have life outside of law. We hide that fact a lot, that we actually have a lot of other obligations and hats we need to wear. But we've always tried to make it where it's either maternity leave, paternity leave, personal days, sick days, and vacation, and trying to work around those, the need for the work life balance, especially with people who have families,
Yeah.
because nobody wants the best lawyer written on their tombstone. They want the best dad or the best mom
Right.
written on there. So and you only get one opportunity. I tell clients that, and I tell staff that you only get one opportunity to raise your kids. And when it's done, it's done. There's no going back and there's no redos. So you got to make that the priority. But yeah, I think lawyers, paralegals, we all struggle with juggling, all the events that our kids have. And, my wife has a term called Maycember. Have you heard of Maycember?
No.
I guess the moms in her group have come up with that because May and December, the schools cram in almost every event that you can imagine.
That's true.
And in December, right before the end of the semester, and again in May. And so she's like, it's Maycember, so we have this and we got that, and I got them to move this, and you're going to have this meeting then, so we can accommodate that. But we're in full fledged Maycember mode right now.
Yes.
Last night, we had a graduation dinner. Day we had middle school graduation. I think there's a baseball game tonight. I just ask her what's next, like and try to roll with it. Sometimes I have to ask her when I leave work, where am I driving? Am I going home? Am I going to the baseball park? Am I going to the school?
Right.
Just tell me where I need to go. It's great though that we all have kids, and I think I don't know if any of my kids want to be an attorney after watching me be an attorney. Actually, I don't know what that says about the profession, but um, I do think it's important though that the kids see like how much we work toward helping people.
Yeah.
And helping them through some of their their personal struggles in life. I had a young child, well, not young child, 16, I guess. That tells you how old I am. I'm thinking 16's young child, but she came up to me and said, "It's really cool, Mr. Berga, that you're doing this podcast." I'm like, "Really? Like you're listening?" "Yes, I'm listening." I was like, "Well, out of curiosity, why are you listening? Like what, you want to be a lawyer?" She's like, "Not really, but," she said, "it is interesting. So people your age don't normally do cool things like that and have a podcast. That's not, something from your generation." And so we've talked about that at work too, like how information is changing. I had a client the other day who's younger than I am, and I said, "Depositions are coming up in a week. I want to schedule some time to go over questions. And what are you nervous about?" And trying to get them calm and ready to go. And I'm good. I'm like, "What do you mean you're good?" I've been listening to these lawyers, with this deposition podcast, and she named off 3 or 4 podcasts. And it's like I've been listening to them for the last month, waiting for this time to come. And we did a little prep, but she really didn't want a lot of prep. And we went to the deposition, and it was she was one of the best witnesses I've ever seen. Like Witten, I can't speculate to that. I can't estimate. I don't understand. You're gonna have to
Wow.
rephrase. Like the lawyer that they had to work for their money to get her to answer questions. But it's interesting. Like I would have never thought about going online and watching podcasts about how to be a better witness. But the world is definitely changing. What do you think? Like one of your most defining moments personally that shaped you to be the person that you are.
Wow. Maturity is very hard to come by. It takes a long time. And I remember I met someone, and I'm going to mess up the name or whoever it is, so I'm not going to call names. But she said to me, always leave your personal life at home when you go to work, and never take your anger from a situation now to the situation ahead of you. And I really had to think about that for a long time. When I was younger, I had the personality of, if you make me mad, I just shut down and I don't say anything because I don't want to say anything that aggravate the situation. And I guess that incited her to say whatever she said to me. After thinking about that, I realized that I have to put a smile on my face no matter what, and be pleasant to everybody that I encounter, because the person walking up to me now isn't the same person that I had been talking to 2 minutes ago, so they have no clue what's happening with me. And they shouldn't have any clue what's happening with me, right? I'm at work, I'm supposed to be a professional, and so I have to carry myself that way. And keeping that in mind day in and day out for as long as I've had that message in my head has really helped me to get to where I am today, I think.
No, I think that's something that I think I was told the same exact thing about, as far as leave your personal problems at home. You don't have problems when you're in the workplace, and I still generally agree with that philosophy. And I think that our clients, I tell people clients don't necessarily want to hear about your problems. They're here for you to help them with theirs. Sometimes I've kind of wondered if that doesn't lead to a little bit of the mental health issues that we see in, law and family law, because I spend sometimes more time with the people I work with than family or friends. And if you don't, have an outlet and you don't talk about the things that are bothering you and in a healthy way, in a professional way with people, it does, you bottle them up.
Yeah.
I've tried to, find outlets for that, still stay true to the mantra of, don't let your personal problems get in the way. But,
Right.
at the same time, trying to find healthy outlets to release those and healthy ways to discuss them. Because I do think that, you and I have shared experiences and, from just being in the field together so long. And I could probably relate to a lot of the things you're telling me, and you could relate to things I'm telling you. And I think to sometimes outsiders, it's very hard for them to relate to the pressures we feel.
Yes, yes. And going back to just having an outlet to talk about your stresses or your personal life or something like that, that is very true. And I have worked with another association here in Florida to have stress group therapy session. I don't know, it's all of that and everything all combined. And any paralegal in Florida can call into it on Thursdays from noon to 1. And you just talk about your stresses at work, at home, from I don't know, family, friends, anything you want, because mental health right now is such a big problem in our society. And we have to do everything we can to fight it. So, speaking about it, reaching out to different people. And when I say different people, I mean different paralegals, different legal professionals that understand what you're going through because they're dealing with cases, because they're dealing with the law and they understand the pressures and they can help you. Like you're saying, you can commiserate together, oh, yeah, I went through that. I know what you're talking about. You can do XYZ and it may get better, just to get some advice or just to vent, and venting that's understood instead of just brushed off as, oh, it's just your job. You'll be fine.
I 100% agree with the mental health. In fact, I was at the family law section of the Florida bars in-state retreat, and we had a CLE, and they had a lady come talk to the bar, and the bar is offering those same type of counseling services to attorneys. And, as the lady was speaking and he was going through, like, symptoms and signs of mental health, fatigue, trauma, and I was thinking, I was like, I have seen these things firsthand, whether it be me or other attorneys or people in the legal field. And you kind of wonder why they're behaving that way or why they're reacting that way. And it doesn't really seem rational, but it's really, honestly, defense mechanisms, mental health defense mechanisms. That behavior is a defensive mechanism because of the stress they're under.
Yeah.
And, I think, we're becoming more in tune with that. And I think that's a great thing, whether you're a paralegal or an attorney, to take advantage of those resources. And especially with family law is highly emotional, highly charged. And, I think having those outlets is very, very important. So, we're rounding up our hour here, but I want to give you this opportunity, because I really would like you to make a shameless plug for the Florida Family Law Paralegal Association, so that we can get some more chapters and get more involvement and really grow this thing. If you want to start a chapter, how do you start a chapter? Who do you contact? Can people really get the ball rolling in their community if they don't have one yet?
If you don't have a chapter, go on to the Paralegal Association of Florida website and reach out to the state president. Her name, her email address, and her phone number is on the very first welcoming page, and she will send your message to me, and I will send you all the information that you need. And I will mentor you if you want mentoring. We'll do whatever it takes to help you get your chapter started and help you get members. And, we will, as a state organization, come out to your community and help you to promote your chapter and raise awareness within the legal community of your chapter, your paralegals, where you work, all of that. I think it's very important for paralegals to understand that they can't, or they won't see the benefits of the association unless they get their attorneys involved as well, right? It's important that attorneys understand that we need the same CLEs that they need, and we get it within the association. The attorneys have so many associations they can be a part of. Like you were saying, Gerard, the family law section of the Florida Bar. But there's also, I think, over 100 sections, right? The animal law section. I know I said the young lawyers already, but that's the only one that keeps popping into my mind because those are the ones that I'm focused on, to help them understand that we need to be a team. But just reach out and we will do everything that we can to bring awareness to the firms in the community that the paralegals need an association and the benefits of the association because the firm will benefit, as what laws changed and how they changed, what judges' rules changed and how they changed. And so when you file something or when you submit a document, it's the right document in the right format and it doesn't get bounced back. And you don't have to do 10 extra steps to get your paperwork filed properly.
Well, our experience with you and with the association so far has been amazing. I think we have another event coming up that we're going to, I think, help you host or the firm's going to host. I think I have a speaking engagement with something for the association coming up too. I think what you said is critical. If you're an attorney and you're out there listening and you don't have an association in your area, help empower your paralegals to take the first step. Help them along the way where you can and be supportive, whether it's financially, the time off needed to do this, or let them have the hours in the day to get the ball rolling. Because what ultimately benefits the paralegal is going to benefit the attorney, and one hand washes the other. And a happy paralegal is a happy life to your attorney. All right, any attorney out there has been doing it long enough knows you want a happy, well trained, well rounded paralegal who's got your back. I think the association lets the paralegal know there's a group of people out there have their back. And,
Yes.
you know, I just want to take the time to thank you for making time today as a mom, as a professional to do the podcast. Let's have a little bit of your time and sharing your insights with us and your professional help that you've given us in our area on getting our chapter going. I know we've been on this journey for maybe about 6 months, and I feel like I know you. Like you're a part of the firm, but guys, reach out, help her grow the association, and help everybody get the support they need so they can be mentally well-rounded, supported, educated, and productive. And we will definitely have you back on, as I know that you are just a wealth of insights and knowledge on this area, and you know, family law could not exist without the paralegals who help us lawyers along the way, and help guide us through the process and guide our clients through the process. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing all of you next time. If you haven't, please subscribe, like, or share the podcast so that we can get this information out to more and more people going through these challenging times and facing family law issues, and perhaps future paralegals who are looking for the first steps and how to become a paralegal and why it's important that we have more paralegals in our profession. Asha, thank you and have a wonderful day. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.